Am I the a-hole for charging my autistic 14-year-old son money for food? Story: I, 45F, have 2 kids, 14M and 17F. My son has high-functioning ASD, and honestly most people cannot tell. But it comes out in certain aspects of his relationships, such as thinking about others, compassion, etc. My son also eats a lot of food, way more than someone for his age. He's not overweight in any way, so the doctors have not considered this a problem. Here comes the problem. For years, when we have ordered food, he has neglected to realize that the food we order is for the whole family, not just him. My husband and I have both spoken to him about this multiple times, and usually he just gives half-hearted apologies. We are working on this with his therapist, among other issues he has. On Friday, my daughter had work after school, so she drove herself there while my son took the bus home. He said he was hungry, so I ordered a pizza and told him to save some for his father and sister. I only took a slice. Usually, my daughter does not eat much, 1-2 slices, and same thing with my husband. That would have left him with 5 slices of a large pizza. About 2 hours later, my daughter comes home and sees the pizza box empty and starts bawling. She usually is not one to complain about food and will usually just make her own food, but she did not have time to eat before work today, and during lunch she was making up a test, so she did not eat since breakfast. I was furious at my son and deducted the money for a new pizza, plus a generous tip to the delivery driver from my son's bank account. My son saw, and now he is pissed. My daughter thought it was the right thing to do, especially when this is about the 3rd time it had happened to her. My son's reasoning is that he doesn't work, so his only sources of income are for his birthday and Christmas, so my daughter should have paid since she has a job. My husband and I both are on board with what I did, but I don't know. Is my son right? Am I the a-hole? Update. For everyone saying we are underfeeding him, we have tons of food in the house. The fridge is stocked. We have snacks, ingredients, etc. My son refuses to learn how to cook, even when we have offered him cooking classes. Even without learning to cook, we have boxed pasta, popcorn, bread, vegetables, and fruits, rice, etc., all of which require no cooking ability. He simply chose to eat the whole pizza. Response 1, NTA. Having autism is not an excuse for eating the entire dinner and leaving none for the rest of the family, even after being explicitly told not to do so. Having autism is also not a shield against the natural consequences of his actions. He ate the entire large pizza that was the entire family's dinner, and you had to order another one. It was only fair that he paid for it. In the future, perhaps it's best to affirmatively set aside the food for your husband and daughter and yourself, labeled so there can be no confusion, and then let him eat. Also, there are some diseases that either lead to extreme hunger or prevent the full cues from registering in your brain/body. Reply 1, especially after being explicitly told not to. F around and find out is a universally acceptable way to encounter consequences and is often better than just being told. This is a proportionate consequence for the offense. Reply 2. Here's the part I don't understand. My son's reasoning is that he doesn't work, so his only sources of income are for his birthday and Christmas, so my daughter should have paid since she has a job. So he thought he should get to eat everyone's dinner, and the sister should be punished by having to pay for it because she had a job. What? Reply 3. That sounds more like adolescent reasoning than autistic reasoning. Having raised one, I think 14-year-old boys are jerks. I also have ADHD and work really hard not to be a jerk and let the autism get in the way. Reply 4. Yeah, typically I've heard people on the spectrum express that being explicitly told something is usually helpful, particularly when you actually explain why, i.e., your father and sister need food too. So it sounds like this kid is just weaponizing his diagnosis to not bother learning anything. OP handled it well. Reply 5. Yep. Save this much for the rest of the family is a clear expectation. It was clearly communicated. OP's made it clear there was plenty of other food in the house. As a fellow ridiculous metabolism person, I still eat like a teenage boy in my 30s and remain thin. I have sympathy for being hungrier than others might anticipate, but getting more than half of a pizza to yourself and then having to go to the fridge for other food when you're still hungry isn't a ridiculous burden. Eating the whole pizza specifically was just greedy. Also, if he's that hungry all the time, how is he not motivated to learn to cook? I get that he's a younger teen and can't be expected to make fancy meals, but a sandwich, scrambled eggs, box of mac and cheese? Most people keep enough staples on hand that even with minimal food prep skills, a person can feed themselves out of the fridge/pantry. OP is not the a-hole. This kid needs to learn to behave respectfully to others if he ever hopes to function as an independent adult. Response 2. Regardless of his diagnosis, there should be consequences to his actions. How big was the pizza? Growing kids may have out-of-bounds metabolism. We have a pizza place that does personal pizzas. Maybe that's a better solution, or a large for the family and a small that is his. Not the a-hole. Reply 1. It isn't the autism. He's well aware and been told several times. This is generic teen boy behavior. If he learns his lesson because he was finally affected, then she will know it isn't the autism. Reply 2. OP said in the post how many slices were there, but the main issue is that she specifically told him to save some for dad and sister. Also, this isn't the first time he's done this. I think because he's never been given consequences before, he just has to say sorry and then will just continue to do this. Maybe this will make him realize that sorry doesn't fix everything. Reply 3. Exactly this. I am autistic with ADHD, and people can't tell. Even neuropsych said I was their most difficult adult to diagnose. Don't question yourself. You set a fair and legitimate boundary, and now there is a consequence for crossing it. That is what you are supposed to do. He will think twice next time, but if he does the same, then you do the same too until he learns his actions with food will have consequences. Not the a-hole OP. You handled it very well. Reply 4. Now I can barely eat 2 slices from a large pizza, but as a teenager, an entire large pizza to myself would not have been out of the question. That said, I'd never have done this. Response 3. I ordered a pizza and told him to save some for his father and sister. He knew he wasn't supposed to eat the whole thing. That's a very clear instruction to leave some, which would logically have to be at least 2 pieces since it's for 2 people. Not the a-hole. Sucks for him in this particular instance, but maybe he'll pay more attention in future when he's told to leave some for other people. Reply 1. Exactly. It's not like he had to be considerate and think about other people. He legit just had to follow instructions. Not the a-hole. Reply 2. Sometimes being specific can help. I would tell him you can have 3 pieces of pizza next time. Remind him that more will come out of his pocket money to replace it. This is just bad roommate behavior that will not lead to success for this young man. Reply 3. She was specific. She said, don't leave 0 for your other family members. If he had left exactly 3 slices and said, I left 1 for you, 1 for dad, and 1 for sis, then I could understand it more as an autism thing where he technically followed the directions but maybe wasn't capable of seeing the implication of leave them a reasonable amount. But if he's high functioning, he can understand the difference between eating some of a pizza and eating all of a pizza. Response 4. NTA. My son's reasoning is that he doesn't work, so his only sources of income are for his birthday and Christmas, so my daughter should have paid since she has a job. This is invalid reasoning. Neurodivergent or not, he can see that this leads to the conclusion that if you have no income, it is okay to take what you want from someone who has an income, which is theft. My son does not have much money to begin with, and he is neurodivergent, which makes it difficult for him to consider others. When enough consequences hit him, he will start to take others into consideration. Many neurodivergent people have difficulties in empathizing other people. Fair enough. He may not get how his sister feels, but once he makes the connection that being an inconsiderate hog costs him real money, he will get the picture. It is your job as his parent to set the boundaries and consequences so that he can understand right and wrong. Not enforcing a consequence that hurts leads to a failure to launch. He may need different ways to reason through things or alternative consequences. Work with his care team to get it right. What you absolutely don't want to be is that parent who is always excusing her child's behavior because he's neurodivergent. Reply 1. Definitely. You know why neurodivergent women mask to a higher degree and go undiagnosed longer? They are socialized from day one that women are supposed to be accommodating and consider everyone else in the room before they consider themselves. I'm not saying that's great either, but you can't just be like, Well, he's an ND boy. He doesn't know how to consider other people's feelings. He can learn. If he doesn't, he's going to have real-life consequences. Eats a coworker's food out of the shared fridge. Fired. Fails to recognize his future partner's feelings as valid. Dumped over and over. Doesn't understand that some people have bad intentions because that's not how he thinks. Scammed, abused, injured, etc. Masking and learning about how our behaviors affect others can be exhausting for neurodivergent people, but it's necessary for self-preservation. If no one teaches him, he's going to amble into a bad situation eventually. Reply 2. I have noticed that a lot of times when I run into males with ASD, they do as they please, where a lot of women with ASD that I run into actually think it through. Reply 3. My ex-husband is autistic and it was very draining because he just did not care about anyone but himself. His family would say, "Oh, it's because he's autistic," while placing him on a pedestal. "Oh, he can't be that bad. Oh, I'm sure he didn't know. I'm sure he didn't mean it. Obviously, he wasn't taught anything besides getting what he wanted and getting away with it." Reply 4. I took a class on empathy for work one time. It did help. Sounds like the punishment fit the crime to me. He was given instructions and disobeyed. Reply 5. Exactly. Thankfully, she didn't just excuse his behavior. She made him pay the consequences, literally. She first explained that he needed to leave some of the pizza for the family, and he chose not to listen. She made him pay for a new pizza, and he didn't think that was fair. That's the punishment. It is very aggravating that so many parents and the people with the disability themselves try to blame a lot on the disability instead of taking account for their or their children's actions. Good for you, O.P., for not doing that, as well as teaching your son there are consequences to his actions. Response 5. NTA. This is a perfect natural consequence. If he was still hungry, he could have made himself some food, but he chose to eat everyone else's. He pays for that. Why on earth should his sister buy him dinner? It's not about him being autistic, as he clearly knows what the deal is. He's just a selfish teenager and needs to learn that being selfish has consequences. Reply 1. This isn't an autism thing. When I was in school, a lot of guys would do this when there was free pizza as a reward. They would take 5, 6 pieces when they knew the rest of the class didn't even have a chance to get one. Response 6. This has nothing to do with ASD. This is to do with your son being an entitled AAE. My daughter should have paid. He ate her portion and expects her to pay for it. Usually when you point out to someone with ASD that they've behaved badly, they are apologetic. He just didn't care until there were consequences, and even then he's sorry for himself, not his sister. Reply 1. This. I have ASD, and I never had a problem with this. The few times I ate something my family wanted, I would feel immensely guilty, apologize, and get more out of my own pocket. I never had an issue with eating all of a family dinner. It just never happened. My younger brother, however, does not have ASD. When he was a teenager, he would insist on eating the lion's share of food and eat whatever he could get his hands on. We were once each given huge chocolate eggs from a relative, and he hid his Easter chocolate in his room, then ate mine. He would sit there in the car while dinner from the family was ordered through a drive-thru. Then once our parents stopped in a store, he stayed in the car and scarfed the entire meal. He growled at me once like a damn animal because I asked for a single slice of the 5 slices of pizza he was eating. When I was on chemo, I had to keep a snack stockpile in my room and hide my Ensure shakes because he wanted to see if they would help him bulk up. He even once tried to eat takeout in front of me while Outfather was in the car, smirking because he thought it was mine. I don't eat onion rings, so he had to explain to Father Dearest why he ate his food. I once even had a bag of durian-flavored cookies that I labeled "Do Not Touch" to teach him a lesson. Of course, he took that to his room and you could hear the retching and gagging. He at least learned to be more careful around my food. He knew if he just asked, he could get some of most things. But he didn't want some. He wanted it all. And since nobody gave him proper consequences, he just kept doing it. He ain't good for OP. She needs to nip this in the bud before he becomes an adult and starts getting roommates. Because the real thing that taught my brother not to do this was when he tried this on a roommate and the roommate had enough and gave him a proper beatdown. The real world isn't as forgiving. Reply 2. I've had similar experiences with guys I've dated or went to school with, and it's always the guys that do this. Reply 3. Yep, I couldn't even drink a can of soda in peace whenever I was dating someone. Just male entitlement. Reply 4. My brother and a couple of his friends once ate my entire birthday cake before I got in from school to even have some. I mean, what the hell is with these people? Reply 5. Whenever I see stuff like this about boys, I wonder, do they do this to their friends? Or is it just the family, and usually female relatives, who are suffering? Which means really it's not autism, the kid is just an a-hole. And the point of parenting is to make sure your kids are not a-holes. Take his money and do so the next time he does this. He needs to feel actual pain to stop this horrible behavior. Response 7. My son's reasoning is that he doesn't work, so his only sources of income are for his birthday and Christmas. So my daughter should have paid since she has a job. Your daughter isn't the one who ate everyone else's food. Reply 1. Seems like some sort of power move coming from jealousy. She earns her own money, so has some nice amount to spend. Maybe it makes him angry that she has more that way than him, and that is how he wanted to take out his anger on her by eating her food and then forcing her to buy food so she has lesser money. Response 8. NTA. He knows what he's doing. You've explained it. You explained it in the moment. He just doesn't think it's reasonable, and there haven't been sufficient consequences to stop him thus far. And I'm autistic, so y'all can miss me with the excuses. Too many autistic men get away with doing whatever they want to women because they blame their ASD. Reply 1. Thank you for saying this. My son is ADHD and about the same age as OP's son, acts the same too. I take your point of view on the behavior, but my husband says it's just kid stuff. Thank you for validating me today, kind stranger. Reply 2. You'll want to correct this behavior before it becomes lifelong. This is a serious issue that will continue to follow him for the rest of his life, and he won't have healthy relationships because of it. Reply 3. Fully aware. It's getting my husband to be consistent with me, that's the problem. He's my stepson, so there's that dynamic to it as well. It's hard to get my husband to see that I'm not being critical of my stepchild. I'm trying to teach my son social behaviors. Blended families are rough. Reply 4. My husband says it's just kid stuff. We are raising future adults. If we want them to be kind, caring, responsible adults that people want to be around, we have to deal with the kid stuff now. If we wait for it to be adult stuff, it's too late. Response 9. NTA. At 14, ASD or not, he has to learn that actions have consequences. So he thinks his sister should pay for his greediness. That's a big no. Reply 1. Seriously, the audacity to eat the whole pizza on his mother's dime, knowing it was meant to be split with the family, and him still getting the biggest portion by far, only to turn around and claim his sister should take her hard-earned money and pay for another pizza if she wanted a slice? I shouldn't have to pay for eating everyone else's food that I didn't even pay for in the first place. If sister wants the portion I ate, she should take the money she earned and buy herself another pizza. How dare you make me pay for the pizza I ate and left nothing for the others? Response 10. My cousin has autism and literally does the same thing with food. Actually, it's much worse, and his mother makes excuses for the behavior instead of holding him accountable. A few years ago, there was a huge Thanksgiving dinner for our entire family. In every universe, you would assume there would be leftovers. Her son ate 4 plates stacked up with food, 3 massive bowls of soup, an entire pan of bread, and made himself an entire other plate of food stacked up for later. There was literally nothing left. The sheer volume of food that young man consumed was just unbelievable. No one was able to take even a small amount of their favorite Thanksgiving food home. Now we have 2 Thanksgiving dinners, one with their family and one without. My aunt will not ever hold her son accountable. It's just pure gluttony at everyone's expense. I hear about him doing it all the time, but she just makes an excuse and everyone around her has to suffer. Point being that it has developed into a toxic situation that is still ongoing. Resentment and disdain has built up within my extended family toward her family with little to no chance of resolution. OP did the right thing, not the a-hole. Reply 1. ND people, especially with autism, struggle with body cues. There are a lot of health risks that go with that. as it's all the way from not knowing when they're full to bumping into everything, because they don't know where their appendages are, to not knowing they're having a catastrophic heart attack. Your cousin's going to hurt himself because your aunt thinks he knows his body. P, you'll only have success, and your son will only have friends if you make boundaries around ratios. It doesn't matter if he likes to eat so much, he needs to work on the skill of eyeballing the amount of food and only taking equal portions. He's going to lose friends over this one day if he hasn't already. Your daughter deserves the same number of slices as her brother, and she can have them for leftovers if she wants. And you need to stop making excuses for him. A colored Tupperware system is a really good way to keep him from robbing everyone after as well. If he wants more than 1/4 of the pizza, he needs to top off with something else or pay for it. Reply 2. One of my kids, who is ND, was an athlete who trained 4 hours a day and as a teen ate massive amounts of food, even compared to peers, and stayed slim. I would make sure he was pre-fed before he went somewhere and was coached on how much was appropriate to eat, even if the host said to help themselves and eat as much as you want. We also talked about not filling up on 1 or 2 things. For example, don't fill up on steak because others will miss out. Eat salad and bread and other sides. Response 11. NTA. I'm sorry, but he just sounds selfish. I'm basing this comment on his reasoning that his sister should pay for her food as she works and how he should not have consequences for not following clear instructions. The people I've met with high-functioning autism are quite capable of following clear instructions. They tend to link the clarity. They are also capable of having empathy for other people. He knew not to eat the pizza. He chose not to follow instructions. Response 12. One of my brothers was like this. He's not autistic, just a greedy, selfish prick who figured that once he ate all the food, no one could do anything about it. Response 13. NTA. The rule your son needs to understand here is if you take somebody else's stuff, you need to either return it or replace it. He ate everybody else's pizza, so he's on the hook for a replacement. Response 14. For everyone wondering if we are not purchasing enough food, I know this is not true. My husband likes to bake and sometimes makes cookies for the family. He usually makes a dozen large cookies, which means there are 3 cookies per person. My daughter and I are usually upstairs when he bakes them, while my son plays his video games downstairs. By the time we come down, the cookies are all gone without my husband even realizing it. Reply 1. You don't really need to overthink this. Your son is a selfish AH. You can be a selfish a-hole with or without autism. He knows what he's doing. Start punishing him more seriously for behaving this way. That's all. Reply 2. There are ways to punish a child that are adjusted to neurodivergence. If OP isn't accurately punishing her child, then he's never going to earn, which means someone down the line is going to teach him that actions have consequences, which is something a good parent would and should have taught him. When the kid ends up in jail because he decided to steal something he wanted because they have an income and he doesn't, or when he gets in trouble at a job for taking someone else's lunch from the break room or eats all the food his job had catered for lunch, etc., it's going to be a huge reality check he should have gotten long before it got to that point. Reply 3. You typed this and didn't find it all the least bit concerning. That you and your other child have to hide food to keep him from eating it all. That your husband makes a huge batch of cookies and likely doesn't get any. He cannot take direction when you tell him not to eat all the food, leaving your other child hungry. And yeah, but he's ASD, is a crutch he's happy to lean on and use. I can tell from this small blurb, you've clearly excused a lot of his behavior. If he's high functioning, he knows right from wrong. He's just being a dick about it now. He sounds like he has unhealthy relationship to food, and you need to be working on his impulse control. You need a plan with his therapy team to curb this behavior. The time for talking ended the last time you directly told him to save food for others, and he ate it all anyway. Not the a-hole that you are making him pay for pizza, but questionable AH caliber for not taking this more seriously before. Reply 4. Most teenage boys do inhale a serious amount of food, but your son needs stronger boundaries around shared food. Response 15. NTA. Your son was told in advance to leave some for his dad and his sister. He ignored this and ate the entire thing, save what you had. He essentially stole what wasn't his, so therefore he needs to make restitution. especially given that he's done this before and hasn't changed his behavior after talkings too. Maybe this time it'll stick. Response 16. Info, because I'm not American and I'm feeling entirely lost right now. How big are the pizzas over there? Because I've never eaten less than 3/4 of a pizza and I'm quite skinny. I've also never met anyone here who ate less than that really. Are the pizzas really this big over there, that one? 2 slices is enough to feed an adult? Reply 1. A large pizza is 16 inches in diameter, 41 centimeters. I've been to Europe, which is where I assume you're from, and large pizzas here are around 3/4x the size of the pizzas I had there. Reply 2. Not to mention the dough topping ratio. American pizzas have really thick dough and heavy toppings compared to European pizzas, which are thin crust and usually lighter sauce/toppings. Edit. Apparently, I was generalizing too much for the but actually crowd. Reply 3. I usually get 2 16-inch pizzas for 2 adults and 2 kids. We usually have some leftovers, but one would not be enough for us even though the kids usually only have 1-2 slices. Next time, take the amount of food you think your daughter and husband will eat and put it aside, or tell him exactly how many slices he can eat. Or simply buy more pizza. It sounds like your daughter could have used some leftovers today. Reply 4. That's not teaching how to be an independent adult, though. If you put the food aside, he will never learn. I would think it would be better if he was taught to do that, and told that as he had trouble with portion control and impulse control that he shouldn't eat any until he had put their shares away in the fridge. Reply 5. A large American pizza is casually enough food for 4 people with leftovers. He ate about 2,500, 3,000 calories by himself in one sitting. Response 17. NTA. He knew, he was told, and did it anyways. Sounds like a great consequence for his actions. Honestly, sounds like he gets very few of those, to be honest. Response 18. NTA. My sister is also high functioning. She was just like other kids when we were growing up, in the sense that she would take all the toys out of the cereal boxes and hide them where she wouldn't have to share them. I can't give her too much grief over it because my ADHD ass would take all the marshmallows out of the Lucky Charms so I wouldn't have to share them. I do not think that having a disability excuses the refusal to share or to leave something for others, regardless of whether or not a parent reminds you to save some for someone else. This kiddo is 14 and not an idiot. He may process information differently, but it doesn't mean he lacks the ability to reason and logic or to have compassion or consideration. Having a disability, any kind of disability, does not excuse this kind of behavior, and I think you were exactly right to pull from his money. If he doesn't want to share, he can order his own, and you can order for the others. Original poorly worded text. NTA. My sister is also high functioning and has never done anything like this. Having a disability does not excuse this kind of behavior, and I think you were exactly right to pull from his money. If he doesn't want to share, he can order his own, and you can order for the others. Editing this whole post because I poorly explained my answer, it will still say, not the a-hole. Give me a minute. Response 19. His impulse control isn't where it needs to be for his age because of his autism. I have neurodivergent teens too, and food is a thing, especially a high-value food like pizza. I have to portion it out for them. If I let them, then something like that will happen. I give them plenty to eat, and I'm ensuring everyone gets to eat. Don't let him have free reign over the pizza anymore. Give him his share and put the rest away. If he's still hungry, then make sure you have plenty of snacks available. Reply 1. He didn't have free reign. He was explicitly told, do not eat the whole thing. This is not impulse control, this is following basic direction. She's not expecting him to determine on his own how much he should leave and regulate his own eating. She's expecting him to follow instructions. Reply 2. They are trying to make the point that he probably couldn't control his impulses and stop eating it. Portioning out his amount specifically should have been done, and at 14 most people would think they could do that themselves, but he can't handle it with a high-reward food like pizza. I think his answer that his sister should pay for it wasn't okay, and he should take some responsibility. But I do feel like mom should have specifically portioned out the food, knowing he has an issue. If I know my kids will want to eat more than what I specifically have for them for dinner, I'd tell them what we have that they can eat. They know we have the food in the house already, but sometimes it doesn't register when the meal is a certain item that they are thinking. They are older than OP's son, but are also autistic. Reply 3. If he's high functioning, it's likely he'll live independently. Do you think anyone outside of the family is going to care about his impulse control issues? If he eats all of the pizza provided at a workplace, he's going to be ostracized, possibly fired if he continues. If he does it with roommates, they'll kick him out. I kicked out a roommate who couldn't stop eating. His impulse control issues weren't my problem. He was homeless for 6 months. If he doesn't learn this lesson from people who are obligated to care for him, he's going to have a horrible life. Response 20. NTA. You specifically told him to leave some for his father and sister. A large pizza generally has 12 slices. You took 1, leaving plenty for everyone to have at least 1 to 2 slices each. For one kid, no matter how hungry, to eat 90% of a large pizza, ensuring no one else got any, seems deliberate, especially since he didn't pay for it.